All right, guys, here we are again for another episode of Rangers Review. By far the most heated this is ever going to be with all the things that we've talked about throughout this season. This Rangers Review just hits a little bit different today. As you guys know by now, that's why you probably clicked on this one. So we have a lot to unfold between myself and Statboy Steven, two diehard Rangers fans, as we will be recapping the past week or so of games since we last recorded for the Rangers, how they have fared, some prospect updates as well. Also looking at the rookies currently in the lineup, the injuries, and everything that led into the Rangers' defeat against the Capitals last night or so at the time of recording this, and everything in between. So before we get into anything further, Steven, how are you today, my friend?
Doing good. As you know, quite busy, in the middle of a move to another country during a pandemic. So that's always fun. But Ranger games were interesting for different reasons. Not all good, but for the Ranger fans, it was an interesting week.
Yeah, and I think that's putting it lightly just how interesting this week was. What a roller coaster, man. So let's get right into it.
It started off quite slow, with a game against Buffalo, and then you get shut out twice by the Islanders, and then the whole gong show yesterday. But before we get into that, some quick prospect updates. We didn't really get into this one last week. Carl Henriksen signed his entry-level contract. Yes. Kicks in this summer. He's expected to stay in Sweden for one more year. Lauri Pajuniemi signed his entry-level contract, 2-year contract, this past week. Also, he is actually coming over this summer. He's a little bit older. Of course, he's 2 years older than Henriksen. And if you look at the Henriksen contract, it makes a lot of sense. And this is why I also think Adam Edstrom will be signed this summer, because if you sign a player at age 20, you have a little bit more leeway when it comes to arbitration rights. Because if you sign them at age 20, then they have a 3-year contract and they are 4 years away from arbitration eligibility. If you wait until they're 21, they still get a 3-year contract, but they're only 3 years away. So like Adam Fox, for instance, or Nils Lundkvist, when he signs, when they hit restricted free agency after their entry-level contract, they will be arbitration eligible. And it's more about players being arbitration eligible that makes it difficult to negotiate than them being free agents. So I expect Adam Edstrom to sign his contract as well this summer and also stay another year in Sweden. But good news, Lauri Pajuniemi qualified for the final in Liga in the playoffs yesterday. Adam Edstrom is currently in the playoffs of the SHL in Sweden.
Yes, he is.
So some good, some good high quality hockey, some important games. When the lights shine brightest, that's when you want your young players to shine. And Pajuniemi and Edstrom have had a good postseason for their teams. Nils Lundkvist playing with the national team. I had a goal today, I think, and a goal and an assist yesterday. So he's putting up some good points in the Euro Hockey Challenge against Denmark and Norway. It's the season's slowly winding down prospect-wise here in Europe, but there's still some interesting games to follow.
Yeah, I'm most satisfied out of all of them with Lauri Pajuniemi. He's a guy that has kind of went under the radar a little bit because of his injuries that he sustained last year. Mm-hmm. Before that point, I think he was arguably a top 10 prospect or on the cusp of being one because he was scoring multiple 20 goals a season, and he had another very strong season now with pardon me, is it with TPS Turku, correct?
TPS, yeah. Kako's old.
Yeah, he had another strong season, and he's a guy that, in my mind, has the potential to be at least on the third line for the Rangers, possibly sooner rather than later. So I'm curious what he's going to bring to the table. Good shot, could see some time on the power play too. It's just kind of about rounding out his game, I think, and how much he would be able to adjust to the NHL level.
Yeah, he's probably going to start in Hartford. He needs to work a little bit on his defense and his neutral zone play. But offensively, there's not much else he has to learn. He has an elite shot, and some people have compared him to Victor Olofsson of the Buffalo Sabres, but I not necessarily stylistically, but in terms of impact. I think what Rangers can expect in a year from now is the kind of impact that Benoit Pouliot brought to the Rangers. That 1 year he was in New York. mostly of offense on the third line. You don't expect any Kako-like two-way play that we see from that kid, but a solid bottom six winger. Because you need to develop those yourselves. Ideally, you don't go to free agency for fourth line players or third line players. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But exciting. He leads all players in goals over the last 2 seasons, despite missing 20 games.
Very
so that's
impressive.
pretty impressive for a 21-year-old.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm excited to see him, and I'm excited just for the youngsters. And that's been quite the trend as we've seen over the past week of games for the Rangers once again. And now getting into kind of I would say, getting into our recap on the past couple of games for the Rangers this week. Man, oh man, was it something. So going into this week, I believe we both had the prediction that the Rangers would be going 2-1 on the week. Was it 2-1 or 1-2? It was something along those lines. And either way, we both failed because one, they played, I think, a game more than what we initially expected given our recording time. So they went 1-3 on the week, a tough one. And playoff hopes are officially dead. If you guys did not get the picture by now, Rangers are officially eliminated. And, they gave a good fight. And this was something that was an unbelievably strong uphill battle that they would have had to do really immaculate work to try to get ahead and somehow sneak into the playoffs. They didn't, but a lot of factors went into that, including some key injuries too that did not help the Rangers' chances. But either way, here on out for the last week or so, games that they'll be having is just focusing on player development. But I really just wanted us guys, it won't be as the same as previous Rangers reviews for the most part, where we really kind of get a little bit deeper into each game. We're going to pretty much just briefly go through games 50 to 52, because then game 53, the first game of the 2 games we're going to be seeing against Capitals, we really want to highlight for obvious reasons. So just to summarize, the Rangers won against Buffalo over the past week 3-1. Lafreniere had another goal, a beautiful goal, and Ryan Strome had 2 assists for some of the notable players, of course. Zach Jones has continued to thrive, gain some more ice time with the Rangers too, which is nice. And then when you get on to the next 3 games, that's where things definitely are more of a tough pill to swallow. The Rangers trying to keep playoff hopes alive, and the Islanders just say, no, it's not happening. We're a team that we're going all in. And I know, Steven, you said plenty how between acquiring guys like Kyle Palmieri and same thing with Travis Zajac, they're trying to make those last-minute moves. They want to have a deep run. They're very determined because when you look at this Islanders team, they don't have a whole lot of flashiness. You have Matthew Barzal on the offensive front, but outside of that, there isn't too much there, especially with their captain still being out with injuries. So all those kind of things factor into a very gritty Islanders team that are not going to give up much of anything. And Semyon Varlamov has had the number on the Rangers, just like every other New York Islanders goaltender has had their numbers on the Rangers the past couple of years, it feels like. Between Jaro Halak, Tomas Greiss to an extent, now Varlamov, it's no different. They shut out the Rangers in the first of 2 games against each other, 4-0, and then they win again 3-0. So what is your quick stances on those games in particular and the lack of production from the Rangers standpoint, along with the injuries, if you would like to expand on them more, what we saw coming from those Islanders games?
Yeah, those Islander games were a little disappointing. Not that I expected them to win, but you at least hope they score a couple of goals. But getting shut out twice stings a little bit. And then you have guys like Kreider and Lindgren who go out with injuries, and Trouba was out. And the 3 tough guys that we have on the team were out for the game against Washington, which we'll get into in a few minutes. But you play twice against the Islanders and you cannot score a single goal. That's going to sting for a lot of Ranger fans because they have family or friends who live on Long Island who are Islander fans. So, the next morning you go to work and half your colleagues are Islander fans. It can be tough. But I think this is the perfect example of the Rangers not being there yet, which is fine. It's only year 2 of the rebuild, in my opinion. For me, the rebuild started with the Kako pick. But it's year 2. The Rangers were in the playoff hunt until the last 2 weeks of the season in what pretty much everyone agrees on is the toughest division in the league. So there's not much to be upset about this season. Yeah, there are some minor gripes that I have with how certain players have been used or not used. But overall, this season has been a success. We've seen some great games where we scored 8 or 9 goals. We've seen players like Panarin and Zibanejad and Kreider putting up great displays, amazing production. The young guys are now finally clicking a little bit. And yeah, you're going to lose some games to the better teams in your division. It is what it is. And the Islanders, unfortunately, for Ranger fans, are one of the better teams in the league. They made it to the conference final last season. So the quality is there. The talent is there. And they are dealing with some injuries. Like you said, Anders Lee, their captain. But they added some great assets at the deadline. I think the Islanders can go maybe all the way to the conference final again, or maybe even more. So I'm not too upset by the Rangers losing to them. What annoys me, like I said earlier, is getting shut out twice, because now the Rangers have been shut out 4 times this season by the Islanders. And I looked it up. The last time the Rangers were shut out by one team 4 times was 1955 by the Toronto Maple Leafs.
No comment.
That's how far back you have to go to find a team that shut out the Rangers 4 times in a regular season, in one season. So it's pretty unique what we saw happen this season. But this is what they need to learn from. Take it as a lesson, learn from it, try to be better next season. And the Rangers this season are a more robust team than they were last season. Last season they were just flying high. They were all the lucky bounces went our way, especially in the end, near the end of the season. This season, in the strongest division in the league, they seem to hold their own. They are significantly better than the Flyers, Devils, and Sabres, and they are only a little bit worse than the 4 teams ahead of them. That's good. That's progress. That's what you need. And it sucks, but you get to the 4th game, the one last night. It started off great for the Rangers. Zibanejad scores twice. Capo Kakko scores what for me is the goal of the season.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Look, everyone knows I like Kakko, but I'm pretty sure a lot of fans will agree with me. This was the goal of the season. A 2-on-1 breakaway by our number 2 and number 1 player. And the pass by Lafreniere was perfect. He was so patient. And a 2-on-1 breakaway against Zdeno Chara, who played in the league before these 2 kids were even born. Let that sink in for a second. And then Kakko gets the puck back from Lafreniere, and he doesn't shoot. No, he has the awareness and the patience and the balls of steel, the icy veins to just stick handle the puck backwards around Vanacek and then hit it into the open net. It was a beautiful goal, and for me, that was the highlight of the week. That goal.
I agree.
And this is what the Rangers need. This is what you need from the from your young kids. There was a sequence a little bit earlier in the game, in the first period, where Kravtsov was on the forecheck. He wins the puck battle. Kakko gets it in the corner. He dangles back and forth, keeps control of the puck. The puck ends up with Zach Jones, who then dangles around an opponent and shoots. That's the Rangers' future right there. In like a 20-25 second sequence, that's the Rangers' future. And now you have other players like Morgan Barron made his NHL debut. Yeah, in part because of injuries, because Brett Howden is now. I forgot to mention Brett Howden with the injuries.
Yes, Howden has the injury, Kreider has the injury, Trouba, Lindgren, and now we saw some more injuries, unfortunately, in this game.
No, I guess I forgot about Howden's injury, because to me, he's not really a loss. But yeah,
you didn't have to do Howden that dirty. Come on.
We finally got to see Julien Gauthier in the lineup again, and honestly,
I'm a big Gauthier fan. You know that.
It's refreshing. When you're used to Brett Howden in the lineup, it's not even that he makes a lot of mistakes, because he's not the player. He's not the bad player he was a season ago. A season ago, he made mistakes and he cost us games. This season, he's just there. He's so vanilla. If you replace him with any other player, with any random player from a random team, I wouldn't notice the difference. Phil Di Giuseppe is similar. you have to tell me that he's on the ice because I wouldn't notice. But yeah, Brett Howden out with injury, Gauthier back in the lineup, Reijonen on defense with Trouba out, and all of a sudden you have all these draft picks over the last 5 years that the Rangers have accumulated, plus Adam Fox that they traded for, Ryan Lindgren they traded for. But you have all these players: Kakko, Lafreniere, Kravtsov, Jones, Reijonen, Miller. They're all in the lineup. And
I want to add too how not just all of them. We have currently, as of last night's game at the time of recording this, 8 rookies in the lineup. Like it's awesome because it's not even like that. These are rookies where it's like you don't want them to play. They're just called in because it's the end of the season. They're just gaining time like normal guys from years past from the Wolfpack. Just gain a couple games, get some experience. Like no, these are all players for the most part that I could see having either a decent to significant impact on the club. When you go down the list, obviously it's Lafreniere. Then you got Kravtsov, Jones, Barron, Tarmo, Miller, Gauthier, Igor. Like there are so many, and that probably didn't even list them all right there. And Miller, if I didn't say him already, like it's endless, and I love that. That's probably been the most entertaining to me this season. Even though that these losses have sucked, especially against the Islanders, those back-to-back shutouts. Don't get me wrong, they really were a tough pill to swallow. But there's something about this season as I went on with my emotions initially being unbelievably high, and then coming to the realization of, we really need to hone in on the fact that this is a rebuild year. Once again, as much as we want playoffs, let's not let our emotions get ahead of ourselves here. And to just watch these kids on a nightly basis is so much fun. I've been loving what I'm seeing from Zach Jones as of late. I'm happy that Tarmo's at least gained a couple minutes and they're given the injuries. I think Barron has looked solid thus far in his small stint. I think Kravtsov is starting to thrive a little bit more with increased playing time. I like some of the lines that he's been on lately with other youngsters. So in a nutshell, I'm really satisfied with what I'm seeing now that we're getting all these youngsters, because these are all guys that will probably be with the Rangers in some shape or form for the foreseeable future easily.
Yeah, there will be some players that will get traded before we hit the pinnacle of this rebuild. And if you look at the Chicago Blackhawks in 2008, 2009, there are quite a few players on those teams that weren't there for their first cup in 2010. It happens. But the core is here. Adam Fox will be here. Ryan Lindgren will be here. Panarin, Lafreniere, Kakko. They're not getting rid of those guys. Kravtsov depends on the return. I don't think Kravtsov is on the untouchables list, as fans like to call it. But they need to address something, because, and now we get into the big subject of tonight. What happened yesterday was it the third period or the second period? No, it was the second period.
Yes.
What happened yesterday in the second period is absolutely disgusting. It has no place in hockey. And I am not the type of person that blames referees, because I tend to see the human aspect of it. But yesterday, they messed up big time. And today, it was even worse. Anyway, Wilson, the Rangers are on the power play. Buchnevich is near the net, is down on the ice, and Wilson comes in with his full body weight and a stick on Buchnevich's neck, and then punches his neck.
He literally cross-checked his neck.
Yeah, he cross-checked his neck, and then he punched him in the side of the head while Buchnevich is on the ice, defenseless player. Strome tries to pull him away. A scrum ensues. Panarin gets involved. And, okay, so here's the thing. Yes, Tom Wilson can defend himself against Panarin. I have no problem with that. Panarin is like on his back and he's trying to pull him away. Fine. You want to fight back? That's fine. What I have a problem with is that he slew-foots him, pulls him down by his hair, drives him headfirst into the ice, and then afterwards, when Panarin is down, again, defenseless player, he punches him in the head 4 times. This has nothing to do with toughness. This has nothing to do with grit. This has nothing to do with hockey. I don't care what anyone says. Don't come at me with these bullshit explanations like, oh, hockey used to be like this in the 80s. Bullshit.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how the game was. It matters what the game is now. There is no guy in the league that is like Tom Wilson right now, and he's just picking on the guys that he knows are defenseless. So
hockey wasn't like this. Hockey wasn't like this in the 80s. It wasn't like this in the 90s. Yes, certain things happened. There's the Bertuzzi incident that everyone knows. But if this happens in any other setting other than the NHL, if this happens in a Friday night beer league, they call the police. If this happens anywhere outside the NHL, the police is involved. I'm convinced the police is involved if this happens outside the NHL. It's ridiculous that Capitals fans are defending this shit. Peter Laviolette is defending this shit. I'm a big Laviolette fan, but him defending this crap is unacceptable.
It's inexcusable.
The Washington Capitals Twitter account joking about it like during the game, ridiculous.
And then they deleted the tweet soon after. Probably lost their job.
They deleted the tweet a couple of minutes later, yes. But still, damage was done. They send it out, whatever. He gets a 10-minute misconduct for the Panarin thing and 2 minor penalties for roughing. And he's back out in the third period. Meanwhile, Panarin's out of the game. And then today,
the season too. It's official according to David Quinn.
Yes. And today, and this is going to be part 2 of my rant because I'm going to tear down everything. Today, news comes out that the Department of Player Safety, which should change its name because they don't give a fuck about player safety, give Tom Wilson a $5,000 fine. No suspension, nothing. But this is what happens when you put a guy like George Peros in charge of player safety. That's like having Joseph Stalin in charge of human rights violations. It's fucking bullshit. It's bullshit. And the NHL, look, the NHL deserves to go bankrupt. I don't care. I don't care anymore. The NHL is a garbage organization that does not care about its players.
They don't. You're 100% right. And let's backtrack a little bit here. So when I look at that Buchnevich hit, first of all, you know what that first reminded me of? Do you remember a couple years ago when the Rangers were in Winnipeg and Justin Bufflin did the exact same thing to JT Miller?
Yes.
First thing that crossed my mind when I saw that. I was fuming. Then when you get onto the whole Panarin situation, when it was slowed down, as you guys have all seen by now through social media, whatever, as they slow that clip down, you clearly see him pull the hair. You know, it's one of those things where I get it. Fluke accidents happen in hockey all the time. There are accidental things that happen, maybe even in a scrum. You know, there are even fighters out there that are so kind enough that even after they knock out a player, they still hold on to them to make sure that their head doesn't drop on the ice. That's called sportsmanship. Yeah. Even if you are in a scuff. There was nothing here. This was nothing more than being a pure bully. And this is not just because of the fact that we're Rangers fans, okay? If we were any other team, you can see there's a universal agreement. The only people defending Tom Wilson right now, for the most part, again, I'm not going to quote every single person, is usually Capitals fans, as you kind of would. But it's really not all. No, not all of them. I agree it's not all of them. Don't get me wrong. But I'm saying the only people that, for the most part, have the nerve to are people that are, of course, Capitals fans. And it's a joke when you look at this from all angles, because Tom Wilson, it's not like this is his first go-around. This ain't his first rodeo. He's been notorious for this stuff. He has had so many things coming his way. What's that?
He was suspended 2 months ago.
My point, he gets this shit all the time. And I get it that Tom Wilson is a guy that you, quote unquote, love to have on your team, but you hate to go up against him. To an extent, yeah. But if you're going to continue this year after year, no. There reaches a point where I don't want you on my team because you're that much of a schmuck. And that's what he is. He would not even do this. And there was a great quote, and this is according to Valley on MSG post-game show yesterday, was it? Or in between periods, whatever it was how he's quoting Colton Orr. And he said how Orr was saying how if he was in the league right now, he would not be doing that whatsoever. And during his time when he was still in the league, Wilson wouldn't even bother. He only does it to defenseless players, just like a bully would. And it's inexcusable. He only gets a $5,000 fine on Buchnevich. We're still awaiting word on the Panarin incident. He should be banned. And I know that that might be a stretch to some of you watching this, but it really should be given what he has done. He was this close to could have easily ruined Panarin's career. And it's not even an exaggeration. If that went the wrong, thank God that Panarin landed on his shoulder first. Because if he didn't, if that was head first and then continue slant, like let's not downplay this just because it's hockey and it's a quote unquote hockey play. Nothing about that was normal in the game of hockey. That was beyond words. And I think we can all agree there. So now you have a $5,000 fine, which might add back in 2014, Henrik Lundqvist got a $5,000 fine for squirting his damn water bottle in Sidney Crosby's face because that's the NHL for you. The hypocrisy is beyond words. We all know that the NHL is a terrible problem when it comes to actually caring about their players. They don't. You have players all the time that end up speaking out afterwards. And I get it that there's a lot of contradictory things that go in that depending on who exactly speaking out, who's this, who's that. But either way, there is an ongoing problem. And I'm truly floored at what we witnessed yesterday. And for that fucker to get the empty net too, man. It's just, it could not have been written any more textbook than Tom Wilson being typical Tom Wilson.
Look, the NHL is, I don't know, is it still the fourth most popular league in the US?
I don't have the numbers in front of me to defend that properly.
Let's just say that it is. It's never going to get better than this for the NHL because the NHL's biggest enemy in promoting their product is the NHL itself. They couldn't sell a water bottle in the fucking Sahara. That's how bad their PR. That's how bad their PR is. They have.
Really is. If you compare it to other big name sports, go ahead. Yeah.
They have a goon in charge of player safety. Fucking joke. It's ridiculous. And now, look, if I was a Rangers coach and Tom Wilson is on the ice on Wednesday, I wouldn't even send my players out. I would send them home. And let NBC figure it out. You know, the game's on NBC, let NBC figure it out. I don't care. If Tom Wilson's out there, don't go out on the ice. On the other hand, I guess the price is set. Until someone actually breaks his neck or dies on the ice, the NHL is not going to do anything. And Ranger fans are now asking for Mason Geertsen to come in, defenseman from who plays in Hartford. He's a fighter, so... Look, I don't really care about Mason Geertsen. If he wants to come in, if they want to put him in the game, fine by me. I mean, but I don't think he's going to go after Wilson. He's probably going to go after someone like Kuznetsov or Oshie or Ovechkin. Like, Wilson went after Panarin. But that's not what we should be doing. We shouldn't retaliate because the saying an eye for an eye and the whole world goes blind. That's what's happening here. We shouldn't retaliate. The NHL should step in. They won't because they're awful. But the NHL should step in here. They gave Rafi Torres a 41-game suspension in 2015.
Yep.
For a dangerous charging hit. I would argue that play by Rafi Torres...
Was that on Havlat?
I think it was on Hossa.
Oh, and I think it was on Hossa too.
Yeah.
Yep.
That play by Rafi Torres... If you come at me and you say that's a hockey play, I can agree with you because it happened in open play. Yes, he was charging and he left the ice and it was a bad hit and he had a history. But what Wilson did last night had nothing to do with hockey. And then he gloats about it in the penalty box like some halfwit. This has no place in hockey. And Valaket said this yesterday and you touched on it a little bit. If hockey players are in a fight, and Evander Kane had this with Matt Cook. Evander Kane and Matt Cook had a fight a few years ago. And Evander Kane knocked him out with one punch. But he held on to his jersey, so he didn't hit the ice head first. Last night, Tom Wilson couldn't give a fuck. The only reason Panarin didn't leave the game with a concussion or worse is that his shoulder was the principal point of impact with the ice.
Exactly.
That's the only reason. And then you have Capitals fans saying, oh, Panarin's okay. This shouldn't be a suspension. Bullshit. The outcome should never determine the punishment. Because by that logic, attempted murder someone accused of attempted murder should not go to prison because he didn't murder anyone.
Exactly. Maybe
that's how ridiculous.
He got close, but he didn't do it, so it's okay.
That's how ridiculous these people sound. Oh, he's not injured, so it's not bad. Bullshit. But whatever. George Parros is in charge of player safety. The NHL is a fucking joke, and they deserve to go bankrupt.
That is where our emotions currently stand, and rightfully so. I mean, it's one of those things where, look, I love the NHL. I love hockey, but you're right. You're spot on the money with everything, and the upsetting part about all this is that you're right. Probably nothing is going to come out of this. I doubt it. Maybe he'll get a slap on the wrist and get a couple games. Maybe he'll get suspended for the remainder of the season. Just maybe. Again, who knows? By the time this comes out, it'll probably be out later this evening, prior to the Caps and Rangers game. We may find out answers by then after we record it. Again, we don't know right now. All I do know is that out of all players, it's funny too. It's the Rangers' top. It's literally one of the best players in all the NHL. You do this too. I'm awfully curious. I'm genuinely curious what the status would be if that was Sidney Crosby that was taken down. I really am. I really am, because talk about the NHL further. They want to protect and gloat their, really push and emphasize their top players in the league, like the McDavids, like the Crosbys, etc. Panarin is right up there with them. He's a top 5 player in this game. Okay, and you're going to give probably slap on the wrist to Wilson. I hope I'm wrong, but I feel like I'm not. When if this was on Sidney Crosby, God forbid, that player's career could be over. That is the more frustrating thing to me, because you can just before it even happened.
He got a 7-game suspension in March for a hit on Brandon Carlo, which was nowhere close as bad as what he did last night. It's ridiculous. Brendan Lemieux gets a 2-game suspension for a blindside hit, which I agreed with. It's a bad play, should be a suspension. But how is this not a suspension? I don't get it. Because in the span of 30 seconds, he did 3 things that you could suspend him for.
That's all it took.
He got the $5,000 fine for what he did to Buchnevich. That's it. He didn't get anything for what he did to Panarin.
Not yet.
He got a 10-minute misconduct during the game. He got a 10-minute misconduct during the game, which is also ridiculous. And this is where I'm going to rip into the referees a little bit. The referees are right fucking there. They're there right behind the net. They're looking at the play as it happens. And their takeaway is 4 minutes for roughing and 10-minute misconduct. How is that what you come away with?
And it's hard to justify it too, because look, I get it. It's not like the refs are right there where they're watching in slow motion, seeing how Panarin got taken down, but they were right there, literally right there. It's not even like that they were at the other end of the ice. That wasn't the case here.
Look, I don't know if they're allowed to use camera footage to determine this type of shit in game. If it's not allowed, they should change that rule right now. There's cameras everywhere.
Well, I do know that they use the iPad.
They always go to, Toronto for a review, whether or not a sliver of the skate was still touching the blue line or not. That they can do. But for some reason, with this, they cannot do it. If that's the case, then they need to change it. And the last thing I'll say about this, the NHLPA needs to step in here. You have a players' association. They need to step in here. They need to go talk to the owners, go talk to the NHL and say, listen, this crap needs to stop. Because it's not just Panarin. It was Brandon Carlo earlier and the other victims, because they're victims of Tom Wilson's criminal behavior. If this is done anywhere outside an NHL rink, the police is involved and he gets arrested for it. It's ridiculous. It's criminal behavior. It's violence. It has nothing to do with hockey. This was not a hockey play. This wasn't toughness. This wasn't grit. This was not trying to spark something for your teammates because you're down 3-2. This wasn't that. This was just ridiculous. It was uncalled for. It has no place in hockey. And anyone who thinks this is part of hockey, they can fuck right off.
I couldn't have said it better, Steven. And before we wrap up the Wilson talk, because we could go as soon as it happened yesterday, I thought you right away. I'm like we need to talk about this as soon as possible. And before we kind of wrap this up, though, are there any other questions that you'd like to respond to that I know you did Twitter last minute? And again, guys, I apologize for all my YouTube viewers watching this. We did a last minute type of thing on Twitter within an hour before recording this, just seeing if anyone had last minute questions. So are there any that you'd like to further address here before we get off this topic?
Yeah, there was one question which was interesting that I want to go into a little bit. And it was someone who asked me what gaps the Rangers need to fill. And of course, after last night's game, the the consensus is that the Rangers need to add some physicality to their lineup, which you can make the case that they need that on the team. You can also make the case that missing Kreider and Trouba and Lindgren hurt this team more than missing just one of the three, or even two of the three. Those are your three most physical players, and all three are out with injury. That doesn't help either. But the Rangers need to do something. And what I'm afraid of is that the Rangers will add something to the team that makes us a worse team on the ice.
Let me go down the list. Let me go. You want to start? You want to go? Go down the list. Tanner Glass, Cody McLeod. Like we'll go all day with this. If that's what, yes. If we want an enforcer, sure, let's have a pile on there in the fourth line to handle Wilson a handful of times a year.
Brendan Lemieux, Daryl Poe, Chris Newberry, Aaron Asham, Donald Brashear, Jody Shelley, Colton Orr. Those are guys that do not help you win games. Derek Bugard did not help you win games. They probably help sell tickets because for some reason people still like fights, but they don't help you win games. What the Rangers need to do is they need to, I'm not saying to go after Wayne Simmons because, his best days are behind him. The Rangers need to go out there and find the next Wayne Simmons. Wayne Simmons in his prime is what the Rangers need right now. You need a guy that can stand up for your teammates, but also add something in the scoring department that also helps you win games. Someone like Matthew Tkachuk, who might not be the most popular player in the league, and he's probably also not available. That's the type of player you need. I don't want another Cody McLeod. I don't want another Brandon Mashinter, or I can name another 20 that I've seen over the last 25 years on the Rangers that have no place in the NHL at all.
No, you need to find that balance, and that's my biggest thing. I'm not against a guy having that grit to his game that's always willing to defend the team. I love that. But you need to have a guy like Simmons, as you're quoting. I hated Simmons when he was in Philly because of his role. His role was perfect. In the early 2010s, he would be planning in front on every single power play, and he was even at points leading the league in power play goals. He would always get the gritty goals in front. He'd also could snipe a shot here or there, get you upwards of 20 a season, while also having absolutely no problem dropping the gloves and enjoy doing it. And when you have a guy like Wilson, there are aspects to Wilson's game that are appealing for opposing teams. But again, he's reached a point now already in his career, which is still a young career, might I add, where it's inexcusable. And you can't even defend the stuff by any stretch of the imagination now. Even if he puts up 15, 20 goals a season, it doesn't matter. He is a guy, he's an absolute schmuck. But it's guys like that. I agree. And another perfect example too, I know everyone absolutely hates him, but I understand why he's so coveted for Boston, is Brad Marchand. Brad Marchand is another perfect example. He can be dirty at times. Do I think he's Wilson level? No. He literally makes Brad Marchand look not that bad, and that's telling of a lot of things. But he's a guy that's also one of the better players in the league. So yes, it's about finding that balance.
Yeah, and say what you want about the Flyers in the early 2010s. They had Scott Hartnell as well.
Another one who I absolutely love to hate.
Scott Hartnell and Wayne Simmons, and I respected the hell out of those two. They had Dan Carcillo.
Carbon, yep. And he's a huge advocate for the game now since then with, mental health, everything, because he's really not doing well.
Yeah, what the Rangers need to do here, they need to find that player that adds a little bit on both sides of the ice. And let's refer to it as a two-way player, because when we talk about two-way players, we talk about offense, defense. When I talk about a two-way player here, I want to have the physical aspect and the hockey aspect. It needs to be a hockey player first, physical player second. If the physical aspect is your main attribute, like Mason Geertsen, you're not going to help your team win games in the NHL.
No.
The reason the Tampa Bay Lightning won the Stanley Cup, one of the reasons they won the Stanley Cup last year, is because they added Blake Coleman, who brings a physical edge to his game, but also scored 20 goals in the regular season and was half a point per game in the playoffs.
Exactly.
That's the difference. And that's the type of guy you need. And if the Rangers can find that guy in free agency, or maybe they can They can find him in the draft somehow, or maybe they already have drafted him. Maybe it's a guy like
Cooley.
Maybe it's a guy like Will Cooley or Austin Rushev, who they signed as a undrafted free agent last season. Maybe he's already in the organization. Who knows? Braden Schneider, probably still a year away, but he could add something. We'll see. But this is something that needs to be addressed without it harming the team, because you're never going to win a cup playing essentially with 11 forwards. You need 12 forwards that can score a goal. This is why Brendan Lemieux was traded away, because he didn't add anything. Of course, when I brought this up on Twitter, that night he scored a goal. But I think that was the season. But you need guys like Blake Coleman and Pat Maroon and Matthew Tkachuk. And years ago, when you had Milan Lucic and Wayne Simmons, those are the type of players you need. Dustin Brown, Ranger fans might not like him, but in his prime, Dustin Brown was exactly what we need right now.
You could even say, to a certain extent, and maybe not the best type of player, but definitely up there. And I know you're not a big fan of him, but Ryan Callahan was a guy that, in my mind, always had that grit to his game. And I know that maybe he didn't do it as often as what you're looking for, but he was just as hard-nosed and gave every single thing he had every single shift. And I love that about Captain Cali. So you need another guy like that, just in a nutshell. You need that guy that can perform and can be handled in all situations. He was defensively responsible. You can put him on the power play. He'd be in your top six, a leader, in and out. That's all you could want for a team, especially which is going to be making playoff runs starting next season. I think we can all agree there.
The Rangers need a Brendan Dubinsky.
Yes, without unfortunately the repercussions that come with being a Brandon Dubinsky.
Yeah, but okay, so this is the trade-off, right? If you draft or sign a player that plays like Brandon Dubinsky, and Will Cooley can play like him, the trade-off is that you're not gonna enjoy him much after he turns 30.
No,
and that's the trade-off you make. You know, Dan Boyle didn't play until he was 40 because he was a physical, rugged defenseman. You know, if Dan Girardi didn't play until he was 40, and with good reason. You know, those type of players have a shelf life. They also have a purpose. You need to find the right balance. You need to find the right players. Don't trade for Cody McLeod. Cody McLeod's probably one of the better trades or the better moves that Gorton made, because we picked him up off waivers from Nashville, and then we traded him back to Nashville for a 7th-round pick. He just turned that into a free draft pick. Other than that, Cody McLeod did nothing for this organization.
No. And that's the case with everyone, basically, from an enforcer standpoint. I know we got some Tanner Glass fans out there, and Carbomb I did enjoy when he was a Ranger, but it was short-lived. But again, it doesn't do enough for me to nearly justify keeping that guy in the lineup for the majority of the season. And Michael Haley, forgot about him, 2-time New York Ranger. Here's another one.
Michael Haley, whose parents couldn't spell the name Michael. Because it was Michael with EA.
Yep.
Same with Michael Furland, by the way. It's weird that there are 2 players in the league that have the name Michael spelled differently. No, but I mean, ideally, the Rangers make a trade with Calgary where they send Buchnevich and Hedel to Calgary for Tkachuk and, I don't know, Lindholm.
Yeah, and that would never happen, but it's a good thought.
It will probably never happen, but that would be the ideal trade. You know, you add a little bit more experience to your young team in Lindholm. You had a little bit more physicality with Tkachuk, who also chips in with some goals. And added bonus, when you play the LA Kings, you already know Drew Doughty is going to be pissed off.
Yeah, that's a good point.
that's a free bonus. The Rangers just need to identify this player. You know, a couple of years ago, Jeff Gorton did a great job identifying the next big center in Mika Zibanejad.
Yep,
perfect. We need that kind of trade for the next Matthew Tkachuk or the next Wayne Simmons. If we can do that, we're good. They're probably going to play Mason Geertsen tomorrow. I mean, whatever.
I don't think that they are.
Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't care. There's only 3 games left. What are you going to do? But I'll say this, though. the NHL has basically set a price on this despicable behavior, and I guess there's a bounty out on Wilson. I'm pretty sure players will either go after him or go after his teammates.
I mean, maybe. We'll find out. If we're talking from the Rangers side of things, David Quinn.
I'm talking about the Bruins, who they're playing afterwards.
Oh, okay. No, Boston's a different story. Boston's a completely different story. No, you're right. But I'm saying, though, just in general, from a Rangers standpoint, I have seen just from tweets that popped up as we're recording, David Quinn has said, basically, we've had internal discussions as a team. Basically, we shouldn't expect to retaliate. And look, as much as it would be entertaining to see the Rangers somehow retaliate and just give it to Wilson and mess him up going into playoffs, 2 wrongs don't make a right at the end of the day, especially in this scenario. And that is all the NHL needs to defend the Wilson situation further. Should there not be a scenario where if say it's still pending what they're going to do with Panarin, whatever it may be, if that is the case, and then you go into tomorrow night's game and there still isn't a decision, then you retaliate, that very well can make the NHL backtrack because they felt, he got his money's worth. Okay. Now it's even. Unfortunately, I do believe that's how the NHL would view that situation.
I mean, what can I say? It's Department of Player Safety run by George fucking Peros.
There's nothing else that needs to be said.
What do you expect?
I have a sour taste in my mouth, Steven. Let's get on to something a little bit more positive, and that is a little upsetting too, just knowing that this is going to be the last week of games upcoming for our New York Rangers. So quite the season. It's kind of crazy. This one has felt quick and long all at the same time, and it's also bizarre too because this isn't a normal NHL season. So when we get back in the thick of things next year, 82 games, boy, is that going to be entertaining because I like it. We haven't been in that rhythm for a while now. So I'm looking forward to we get back to full normalcy for next year. But the Rangers, as we know, have 3 games upcoming, starting with Wednesday night's game, which should be a day after you probably watch this. Maybe it'll be the day of or after. All depends on when you watch this, guys. But we'll be against the Capitals again, as you know. Then on Thursday, it'll be against the Boston Bruins in Boston, and then Saturday in Boston for a 3 p.m. game that day. So my stance on this is I think the Rangers are going to win one of the games. I think they're going to go 1-2, and I think that the Rangers are going to win at least one of the games in Boston, knowing that Boston is clinched in playoffs. I know that they're probably focused on seeding right now, but something tells me the Rangers may get lucky in one of the Boston games. What's your stance? How do you think that they'll do?
Yeah, look, we're without Kreider and Lindgren and Trouba, and now Panarin is sitting out the remainder of the season. I'd be surprised if we win one of those games.
And that's fair, completely fair.
When you're missing not just 4 players, 5. I keep forgetting about Howden. When you're missing 5 players, 4 of which are guys that carry you through games. You have Trouba and Lindgren, top 4 defensemen, and then you have Panarin and Kreider. That's gonna hurt. But we'll see what happens. Maybe with Panarin out now, maybe Morgan Barron can move up a spot to the 3rd line, and we call up someone from Hartford to fill in on the 4th line.
Give me Tyroning, damn it.
That's going to be interesting for me to see how the Rangers are going to handle this. With the injuries, they should be able to call up more than 4 players because, it can have emergency call-ups in case of injuries. Because after the deadline, you can only call up 4 players. Mm-hmm. But Tyroning or call up Austin Rishev or Patrick Newell, it doesn't really matter. Or Brodzinski, like I said, it doesn't matter. Call up someone, maybe another defenseman. See what you have with these kids. We've seen what Zach Jones can do. We've seen what Tarmo Reunanen can do. Morgan Barron got 2 games in. Use these final 3 games to see what you have, like we've done in the past. After the deadline, we had guys like Stephen Fogarty play a couple of games just to see what he can do and just to give him a game too. I mean, I think Tyroning has earned it this season. He would be my first call-up from Hartford.
I agree. I'm a big Tyroning fan. If you guys don't know, I have played ice hockey before once in my senior year of high school. I played spring league. Horrendous, but I had a lot of fun just playing myself in front of the net. I rep number 7 because Ronning, I always have a personal attachment to smaller statured players because I myself am very small. Matt Zuccarello is basically my favorite New York Ranger that isn't a goaltender. So there you go. Ronning, ever since he really worked himself up within the Rangers organization, had his stellar final year in juniors. I believe he had, 60 goals this final year. He was just on fire. And that led me to wearing number 7, repping Ronning. So huge hats off to Ronning. I hope if he can get one game at least before the end of the season, that'd be great. That really would. But before we get out of here, Steven, I just want to mention what the point leaders look like for the Rangers as we wrap things up here for our episode. Breadman, once again, leading the team, surprise, 58 points in 42 games. That'll be it for his season then. Just shy of 60. Awfully impressive, though. Mika Zibanejad, 48 points in 53 games. What a story he has been after it being so cold to start the year. His first 15, 20 games even, and he has just been on fire since then. Ryan Strome, 47 points in 53 games. Another Strome may very well hit 50 points in a 56-game season. By God, is that impressive. Adam Fox, my Norris winner, should hopefully be the Norris winner. 47 points in 52 games on the season for the defenseman. And then Pavel Buchnevich, the 5th best player on the team in regards to points, with 45 and 52. Buch having a phenomenal year on a great pace, along with a lot of these other forwards. So that's really it, folks. Steven, if you'd like to add anything else before we get out of here, you surely can. But yeah, it was definitely a roller coaster of a past week, and I'm looking forward to. It's going to be bittersweet, but I will just say though, also for everyone, before Steven shares his final thoughts, we will be having a lot of things change with Rangers Review on YouTube and in general with the podcast. So just keep an eye out. A lot of things will be changing in the coming weeks and as we get into the off season.
Yeah. One thing, and maybe not a lot of Ranger fans follow him out west, but Connor McDavid still has 6 games left this season.
Oh my God, McJesus, so good.
He's 9 points away from 100.
He's so good. He's so good.
If he gets 1.5 points per game for the remainder of the season, he hits 100 points in 56 games.
I want the Oilers to win the cup so bad. Oilers are my West team as well. I'm fortunate that they have this guy, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. They're pretty good. Man, though, about if there was any guy to be a second coming to Wayne Gretzky of your franchise, let alone in the league, boy, did the Edmonton luck out with getting Connor. It could not have been better for them.
Look, I'm not saying that Kakko and Lafreniere are as good as McDavid and Draisaitl. Let me clear that up first before I'm going to say what I'm going to say now. But when Kakko and Lafreniere had that breakaway last night, it felt like this was our McDavid and Draisaitl moment.
Yep. No, it really did. It had its own taste to it. Seeing Lafreniere do a little bit of a drag, gain that beautiful pass through, then Kakko doing his own little drag as well. That's the future. That is all the memes going in about future. It's time, baby. Like it's here. It's alive and well. I'm pumped. I really am. I'm a big optimist. I'm excited for next season. I'm excited for what's going to happen this offseason. Maybe we'll see some sneaky moves, and we'll get into that as we get closer and closer to the draft. Then, of course, the expansion draft, we're going to be seeing a lot's going on. But in a nutshell, this has been quite the season for the Rangers, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the young kids play for the final week of the season.
Yeah. All right. Last thing I'll say is let's go Rangers, and good night to everyone except Tom Wilson.
Yes. Let's go Rangers, and good night to everyone except Tom Wilson. Fuck Tom Wilson. That's it. Let's go Rangers, baby. I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a good one.